season. Thank you so much for being here. I am Erin Broberg. I'm a communications specialist at SURF, and I'll be your host tonight. Before we begin, I want to quickly thank our amazing sponsors who make these events possible. We're sponsored by Crow Peak Brewing Company, RCS Construction, Northern Hills Federal Credit Union, and Chuck and Jolene Lichten Woolner. So tonight, botanist Rylan Sprague will present on and his presentation will be followed by a Q&A session afterwards. So hold on to your questions. And those of you who are joining virtually, please drop questions in the chat boxes and online. And then after that, we're going to have a special bonus activity. As you leave through the exhibit hall, you'll be able to create seedling starters of 3 of the native plants that we're going to talk about tonight: Echinacea, white sage, and fringed sage to take and grow at home. So this is a topic and a guest that we have actually had at Deep Talks before, but we're especially excited to return to this topic because of a new initiative at SURF called the Sacred Circle Garden. And this garden will be built on a hilltop property at SURF, and it will feature some of the native species we're talking about tonight. So before we welcome Rylan up, we're going to share a short video about the Sacred Circle Garden project so you can learn a little bit more about that.
Hello, I'm Stacy Miller. Hello, I'm Stacy Miller, Director of the Sanford Underground Research Facility. I'm here with SURF's Executive Director, Mike Headley, and Cultural Liaison, Casey Russell, to tell you about an exciting new initiative at SURF, Cangleska Wakan.
The history of the Black Hills goes back thousands of years. In 2015, we built the Sanford Lab Homestake Visitor Center to commemorate the history of lead and to highlight scientific discovery. Now we want to create a space that honors the indigenous people of the region. We're standing at the future location of Cangleska Wakan, an ethnobotanical garden that will be designed with native plants and with an aim to respect, protect, and understand indigenous cultures of the Black Hills. Casey, will you tell us about some of the special features of the garden?
Cangleska Wakan translates from the Lakota language into a sacred circle. A Cangleska Wakan reminds us that everything in the universe is connected. In the native way of knowing science, a sacred circle represents the continued process of growth and development that connects everything in the environment, including human beings. The design of the Cangleska Wakan points to 4 significant landmarks of the Pahasapa or Hisapa: Bear Butte, Bear Lodge, Black Elk Peak, and the Badlands, all considered sacred to indigenous peoples of the region. The heart of the Sacred Circle Garden will feature a medicine wheel, a symbol used by the Lakota to represent spiritual knowledge and a connection to everything in the universe. It is a symbol of unity, good health, well-being, honor, and recognition. The medicine wheel is a circle divided into 4 quadrants. Each quadrant represents various entities and the 4 seasons, which are represented in black, red. In contemporary times, the colors also represented the diversity of nations.
Cangleska Wakan will benefit both the community and visitors in many ways. Cangleska Wakan will create opportunities to better understand native ways of knowing and scientific learning. It will feature special events where we can exchange knowledge about science, education, and culture. Above all, this is a place for all people, a place for personal reflection and inspiration, a place to commune with nature, and a place to foster human connections and cultural awareness. The Sacred Circle Garden really comes down to 3 things: protecting, respecting, and understanding our environment, our strong human connections, and the indigenous cultures of the Pahasapa.
All right, and we do have our Surf Foundation Director, Stacy Miller, here tonight, and she'll be in the exhibit hall afterward. If you have any questions about the garden, she is the person to talk to. So now I'm really excited to introduce tonight's speaker, Rylan Sprague. Rylan served as the Northern Hills District Botanist on the Black Hills National Forest for 5 years before moving to the Baker Snoqualmie, you can fix that later, how I pronounce that, but National Forest in Western Washington to continue working as a botanist for the Forest Service. Today, Rylan is a natural resource specialist for the Bureau of Land Management, and as a member of the Cheyenne Sioux River Tribe, Cheyenne River, Rylan will share about the cultural influence of several native plant species. So please welcome Rylan.
Well, hello, everybody. Glad you all made it. Everyone joining us online as well. As Aaron said, I have a history of working with the Forest Service as a botanist, and so the BLM. And my next venture begins next month, working for the Park Service at Mount Rushmore. So I've really had an opportunity to see all the different ways that the various land management agencies approach managing the botany resources, any emphasis on ethnobotany, and connecting the people to the land, to the plants, how they're used, and also some experience working with various tribes. So all those reasons are why I'm here to share some of that with you today, and any questions that you have that might be related to those different approaches from the various land management agencies, feel free to throw those in there too. The button there. Just gotta switch it there. Oh, thank you. Down to let you know, this is what we're working with. This is how the habitat is kind of divided around the Black Hills. And then it falls in key with harvesting species. If there's a particular species that you're looking for, you want to understand what the habitat is that will sustain that species. So you're not looking in a too dry of an area, too wet, or the wrong side of the slope, whatever that would be. And there are just so many unique features in the Black Hills. For example, we have a lot of rare species and not so rare species meeting their range limits here. So this map kind of shows you it's Sanguinaria canadensis, a regionally sensitive species, and bloodroot is the common name. And you can see it's common in the east half of the United States for the most part. The map showing the green states shows that the species is present in that state, and the lighter green indicates presence in that county and common, whereas the yellow that kind of shows up, that indicates presence in the county but rare. So you can see where we are, we have Lawrence County and Meade County highlighted in yellow for this species. We don't see this species again until you get to basically the Minnesota border almost there. So it's not only disjunct from the larger population, but this is as far west that species is found. So we have the same scenario with a lot of different species in the Black Hills, where they're meeting their northern limits, southern, east, west, just a crossroads for all these species that are lingering on the outskirts of their range. All really just unique features. And that nice Cangleska Wakan video kind of highlighted some of these significant areas. Bear Butte, Black Elk Peak, Devil's Tower, they were all on there. I also have Peshla added in here. And each of these sacred locations, they also provide unique habitats of their own. So the Peshla would be kind of the grasslands complex that we covered, those wide open areas, and Peshla translates to kind of large open area, bare ground. So there's just not a lot of trees out there. It's a lot of grassland. So you get the suite of species that require direct sunlight, no competition from the overstory, things like that. Whereas Devil's Tower and Bear Butte, they're more of the foothills and providing the habitat that you would find on the outskirts of the hills. And then Black Elk Peak and the granitic core, all these different features combined to be inducive to certain species. So we better just cover real quick what is ethnobotany. It is how people of any particular region make use of the plants found in that area. And I used to put on here that that the definition included only how people use plants native to their area. But after seeing how certain people can use the weeds or just non-native species, cultures still have those available. And so just because something's not native to an area doesn't necessarily mean that if it's being used, that still is part of ethnobotany, using those species. So keep that in mind too. And the main ways that plants are used would be for food, medicine, shelter, dyes, tools, just basically anything that you need, these plants can provide. And then we also have a lot of ceremonial and spiritual uses, which more confidential things there, and out of respect, I don't usually go into too much on that. And a lot of the common species that you might find around the Black Hills would just include the various sages, Timpsula, the red root scurf pea. Sweetgrass is here. There's not a lot of sweetgrass, but it is here, and you can find that. Red osier dogwood or red willow, chokecherry, other various willows. All of these are used either as an herb, as a root, as a shrub, or as a tree for structural or tools. So depending on how you're using the plant that you're searching for, you have to keep in a few other things in consideration. So if you're using plant as an herb, you can likely cut that above ground portion off without disturbing the root and allow that to continue to grow each following season. Anytime that you're harvesting a root, you have to keep in mind you're removing the entire plant from that ecosystem. So you have to think about sustainability. There's various rules out there I've heard, kind of 1 in 20 rule for making plant collections. You only collect one if there are 20 others around. Just all those things, because it can be easy but you've been looking for, all day for this one species, then, you found a hot spot. And it's easy to get carried away with digging that up or grabbing everything you can. So always keeping in mind the sustainable harvest and not taking more than you need or sharing with others who may not be able to access some of those areas. So along with that too, you have to be aware of where you are collecting. If you're going to be ingesting something or burning something, you don't want something that's been sprayed for noxious weeds or something that's in the roadside ditch with a highway wash-off coming down. You want to find those pristine areas, and that's why it takes a little more effort to do a proper harvest, because they're not always going to be the most easily accessible areas to get to. And some of the important considerations would include just being familiar with the species that you're really looking for. There can be some look-alike species out there. Sometimes you found a look-alike, maybe it's not a huge deal, but other times it could be very poisonous. Either way, you just need to really know what you're looking for before you're ingesting or using anything. And also being aware that you have different common names for plants, and that's both in Lakota and in English. Could be depending on how that plant is used, who's using it. So you don't want to get confused just focusing on one common name. Be aware that somebody else might call that plant something else. And yeah, just the habitat, trying to fine tune where you're searching for particular species. And we have various resources, pretty much any regional area. You should be able to find some sort of useful book. Some of the main ones I use are Van Bruggen's Vascular Plants in South Dakota, and Gilmore's Upper Missouri River Region plants, and Dillwyn Rogers. Some of these are just other examples of books that are out there, but it's really good to follow so you're not overwhelmed by a book that's this thick full of plants that aren't even available in your area. And, the main way that most plants are used are, you see a decoction a lot. That's making a tea, basically, of using the plant. And it's important not to boil those. You don't just let the water keep rolling and boiling on those plants, because you might be losing those properties that you're trying to extract from the plant. So it's more of a slow heat, steeping. So that's basically anything that you're going to make a tea out of. A poultice would be used for applying to a wound. Burning, pretty self-explanatory there, but sages, sweetgrasses, cedar, and structural can be like an inipi, a sweat lodge, and other various uses in the ceremonial realm. One thing that I've always really thought was neat with the willows, a lot of times you see people who are making a sweat lodge, you will cut the willow and take them out, build the frame, and put your material over top. But I was told by some elders about how you can also, if you're in an area where willows are abundant and you're trying to do a sweat, you can just lay those down and throw your hide or tarp on top, create the sweat lodge, use it, and when you're done, you pull that hide off, and more or less the willow just pops back up. So the kind of the more modern way of doing it is probably a result of those species not being available, whether that's on reservations or we've had various damming projects where some of the smaller stream channels and riparian areas have been lost. So for all those reasons, they change how, say, even just how a sweat lodge is constructed anymore. But it would be neat to try that out with using live willow and then letting them pop back up. And just a few of the common Lakota plant terms, you'll see them repeated in a lot of the Lakota names, and those names are often descriptive of either how the plant looks or how the plant is used. So some of those are chanlogan, hollow stalk, peji, grass or herb, chan is tree or wood, and that could be plant too, hute, root, wakpe, leaf, pejuta, medicine. So you see these words come up quite a bit in the Lakota plant names. And even the Cangleska garden, so I imagine that the chan comes from tree, wood, or plants, and Gleska is spotted or mixed, can be a translation. So it's like a mixture of these different plants or garden. So right there, it's just, again, descriptive, and you'll see these recurring. And we're just going to kind of go over a handful of species, some that I consider the most significant, beginning with Corniceraceae, red osier dogwood, also known as red willow. The Lakota name is chanshasha. So chan, again, is the wood, and sha is red. So it's very descriptive of the physical appearance. And this would be one that could be, the bark is stripped and the inner cambium is scraped and added to probably a bearberry mixture. So you might have a suite of 2 or 3 species and really used similar to like a tobacco for pipe filling. And yarrow, one of the most common plants probably in the world for as far as medicinal purposes. It's circumboreal. You can find it on most every continent, and just so many different uses for this. The Lakota name, Hante Chanlogan, is translated to cedar weed, and if you're familiar with the leaf of the yarrow, it's highly dissected, and in a way, I could see how it could be similar looking to a cedar branch, in a way, just how dissected it is. But a very common species that was used all throughout North America and beyond. And we have wild bergamot, Monarda fistulosa. This one is an example. I've got 2 Lakota names, and they're based on the two different uses. Hehaka tapajuta. Hehaka is elk, and Pejuta medicine. So it's elk medicine if it's used by somebody who is allowed to use that type of medicine. Whereas the more common use of it would be calling it Wakapewa stemna, which is good, good smelling leaf, a good aroma leaf. So that's one that I really like to take a leaf and I'll just be out working, hiking, chew on a leaf, and that spearmint just blasts in your mouth. Sometimes it's a little too strong, kind of spicy almost, but also the flowers, you can pull one petal off and have a little bit of nectar on the end. It's really sweet. But mainly making a tea out of this plant, that's the most common use for sure. Sore throats, helping singers keep their voice, all of those things. And also keep in mind kind of the habitat that you might locate these plants in. Uh, this one is likely going to be in an open area, but not like a really dry, hot area either. Usually, most of the mints are going to have some moisture requirements. So you might see a moist meadow, a little on the drier side, that would be perfect for supporting wild bergamot. Yucca glauca is one that we see quite a bit through the hills, more so probably on the foothills, and a lot of different uses as well. A fiber, I had a good friend that created a necklace for me by pounding the leaves into fiber and basically made a sinew out of it. I have yet to try that out myself, but definitely on the list of things to do. Uh, Soapweed comes from the name or the use of the root as a soap. So again, this is one that if you're using it that kind of way, you're removing the whole species from the ecosystem. Keep that in mind. Make sure you have plenty around to continue to sustain those populations. And the sages, we have white sage, Artemisia ludoviciana. Uh, the Lakota name is Peji hota apebashkashka. And Peji is herb, hota is gray, and the lashkashka refers to the flat leaf with the white belly. Um, so again, very descriptive. This one you could find in a lot of different habitats and used in a lot of different ways, mostly smudging, but also teas. And I like just to have them around just for the aroma as well. Closely related to the white sage is the fringe sage, also known as woman sage. And the Lakota name is Pejihota washtemina. So again, the gray herb, and that it smells good. Known as a woman's medicine, but and I can't help but just pick a little bit of this about every time I pass it and practically cram it up my nostril just to keep that smell. I mean, it smells so good. So that's one of my favorite, without considering ones that I'm eating and all that. Just such a great smell. And it'll be found in a lot of the same habitats as your white sage, kind of drier, more open areas. You could still have some overstory on those areas though. Probably my favorite plant to harvest would be Echinacea. Uh, the Lakota name is Ichakpehu, and I haven't been able to come up with a good uh, understanding of what the translation is referring to, but it's an easy one to find when it's not in bloom because you have your last year's old stock still standing. So those could be knocked down, or you could still find that plant even if they are knocked down and attached. So it could be something along those lines. But the root is, has anybody tried the root for Echinacea? For those of you who have, you know that it's got a strong bite, uh, uh, numbing sensation. It also has salivation. It induces salivation. So not only if you get a really strong piece, not only is your mouth going numb, but you're salivating and kind of, just be careful of who you're around if you're experimenting with that one. Pretty interesting though, and it would be great, I imagine, for a sore tooth or anything like that, a sore spot in your mouth. Just kind of numb all that up and take care of it for a little while anyway. And the nice thing about that one again is you can find it pretty much any time of year, and you don't have to wait for. There's certain species. Well, maybe I'll cover that on this next one here. The next one is Timpsilla, or red root scurf pea. And this is a great example of a plant that, okay, you're harvesting the root again. So you want to try to time your harvest at the appropriate time. So you want to let the plant go into seed. So you have to wait long enough for it to go to seed. But if you wait too long, the above ground vegetation is going to break off from the root. So then that just kind of tumbles like a tumbleweed, spreading the seed around. But it's a really fine window of letting it go to seed and harvesting it before the vegetation breaks off. So back to the Echinacea, that's an easy one because you could kind of go out there any time of year where the ground is accessible and you could harvest that Echinacea. Whereas this one, yeah, if you're doing it appropriately, you have a narrow window to harvest this. But you can see sort of in the picture, sometimes you'll see these chains of the root that has a long root that leads to the bulb, and the section of root can be braided into a large chain. I've seen some that are 6-7 feet tall, probably loaded with 300-400 bulbs like that. So as much as kind of makes me cringe thinking, where'd they get all those? It is pretty impressive to look at too. And you just kind of hope that it's all done sustainably. So I did want to include mullein on here for Verbascum thapsus. Back to ethnobotany being not only the use of native plants, but just any plants that are available. So this is not a native plant to our continent, and it was introduced to our area here probably mid 1800s or so. But meanwhile, it became established, and the Lakota found uses for it and gave it a name, Choguyage, which is referring to cleansing or purifying the lungs. And that's how the plant is used everywhere that it's found. You can burn it and breathe that in, and it's cleansing the lungs, any kind of congestion in there. And also, you can make a yellow dye from the flowers. So if the plant was being used that way, there would be another Lakota name referring to just the yellow dye, making yellow dye from the flowers. We have a lot of different berries and cherries like this around. The Prunus genus, just so many delicious items like this. Chokecherry, might want to add a little sugar, but I do enjoy it just straight off the branch. You'll usually find this in kind of wetter areas, but then sometimes you'll just randomly see it on like a dry path too. So it's kind of variable. But chokecherry, really commonly used to make wojapi, that you could use like a kind of a jelly pudding type dessert dish. Uh, Very good, especially with some fry bread. And I did want to touch on Osha, which is not found in the Black Hills, but it was traded for, and there is a Lakota name for the plant. So that just shows that the kind of the trading that was occurring, and it also gives a great example that you're you're harvesting the root of this species, and this is one that's been over harvested, and it's getting harder and harder to find. Uh, people are, it's almost like the ginseng to an extent where maybe the value isn't the same, but people are making a mad rush to try to get it before somebody else does, and really a need for better management and sustainable harvest of this species. So it's just an example of something that could happen to just about any species that you're harvesting the root and everything else. And it's also kind of similar looking to poison hemlock. So be aware, you want to make a distinguish between those two. So just some of the considerations that you want to make while if you're making a plant collection, whether that's for your personal use or academic use, there are restrictions, and some of those would include rare species, either regionally sensitive or locally sensitive species. Uh, any collection of those, it's going to be limited to academic study and would also require some sort of approval with the permit to harvest those as well. And there are certain areas where you can't make any collections at all. Those would include Forest Service botanical areas. There's about six or so around Black Hills. Research natural areas, a few of those areas around here, national parks, and the entirety of Spearfish Canyon is a special management area where even common species are not allowed to be harvested there. But we can always get a permit for making our collections, and this is probably a good time of year to start thinking about those permits. Could take a little bit of time to process those, and season is right around the corner. So you can contact your local land management office, whether that's Forest Service or what have you, and usually provide the location that you want to harvest from, the species that you're looking for, and a quantity. Um, Keeping in mind any of these sustainable harvest points that we've talked about, and you might get some stipulations along with a permit. Maybe there are sensitive areas within the vicinity where your permit is approved for, and those might need to be avoided. I know there are certain areas where no willow collections are allowed because uh, we have sensitive willow species that are difficult to tell apart from more common ones. So some of those considerations, and you can make these collections uh, for medicinal or edible use. You can make that collection to contribute to a local or regional herbarium, make a deposit like that, or a lot of transplants, as long as you know that you have the ability and the uh, habitat available to support the species that you want to transplant. So keep all those things in mind. And I did just want to end with a map of showing the reservations in the state. Uh, a lot of times you might hear about a certain reservation or a project going on, and some of them we don't always have a good idea of where they're located. So I just like to have that acknowledgement there, and like to say thank you all for being here. Lame Ayalo.
That every All right, do we have any questions to start off? With some of your share all this online after.
Mullein.
I like to just yes, you could slice it right up, and it's similar. Too large of a one. It's an older one that. So you kind of have to find that sweet spot. Summertime. When consistency. I've got a couple chains that would be just fine to throw in some water and boil up.
If we want to get involved to any sort of community action.
Yeah, well, out there with the Black Hills, that just all leads inclined community as well. Or on the recreation. Whatever your interest is, we have one. We doing some survey. We also have communities that are a lot of the chanterelle maybe, and those groups are out there. The Cangleska Wakan garden here, that's something that's going to be available for people to use and potentially participate in, maybe planting or upkeep. You would have to talk with. There's also another garden we developed probably 12 years ago, and then it was neglected for. Somebody threw a bunch of just grass seed in there because there's bare soil. So it's and I think we have maybe a couple students working on that this summer. A group of people or several different groups of people or something like a garden. Campuses in Rapid City as well with gardening. Herbalist. So, you know, it's hard to, it would find all those things listed. Unfortunately, we should take the initiative. You're bound to find your like-minded group of people.
Awesome. Let's give Rylan another round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so as I said at the beginning, this is our last Deep Talks of the 2021-2022 season, and we'll be back in October with monthly events. Know about 2 upcoming events. 850 level will be dedicated as a physical society, and you can watch a live stream of the that on our website. Day, that is the day that Sanford Lab officially takes over the city of Lead with adults, everyone. We have something for everyone, and that is on Saturday, July 9th. Day on Neutrino Day. So thank you all for coming and get some seedlings started. So